people got to know.
Because, I mean, we were on, this is a little fucking town. We're driving around in Cadillacs and leather jackets and big cars. But, you know, it's back in the day. I had a big band then, too. So, I mean, maybe people
thought that the
just
band
figured it was
like
part of rock and roll and, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, that went on for a fair amount of time until, as most of these stories go, you know, that all caught up with us.
Yeah.
And whether...
How did that all happen?
It's a long, painful kind of story in some ways, but in the end, it was better I left that way than left, you know, in a bag.
Yeah, in a bag, for sure.
Because there's really no way out of that easily.
Yeah.
Anyway, my brother, who was in California, came to live with me. Again, my twin brother.
Yeah.
And I was in college, and he was working for, he was had been in the restaurant businesses like maitre d' and like tableside dining and like the front of the house.
Yeah, yeah.
And he came and went to go work in Atlantic City in some high-end restaurants there that were, you know, French tableside dining and big Caesar salads and cooked the steak. But he came to live with me and decided that, and he wasn't a partier, he wasn't cool. He was...
straight edge.
Very straight, very... even to this day. Now he's you know, we're complete opposites. But saw this money and thought, why should you make all this money? And he started to get into the business and buy from me, and then he wanted not to pay anything, like get it for what I get it for.
Yeah.
Well, so why would I do that? I would be stupid.
Yeah, that's stupid. Yeah.
I mean, anyway, and he decided that was all bad and whatever, and he wound up going to the people I worked for, which were, again, at the end of the day, maybe people that were friends.
Yeah.
But it was business.
Yeah.
And it was big money. I mean, we're talking, you know, the stories are wacky, crazy, bags of millions of dollars of cash and hanging around in New York.
Well, here we are on Sucio Talk. Tell us about it.
No, so, I mean, you know, there's not much to tell other than he came and decided, you know, he needed to take that over. And he wound up going around my back to them and said I was screwing them, basically. And I was...
Your own brother. Twin brother. Born 5 minutes.
Who
you guys have a good relationship now?
No.
Okay.
He's a Trump supporter. He's a...
Oh, fuck that.
He's a shallow... he's a spitting image of my father, who was not a nice person either. He's a racist, bigot, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, he decided, you know, this was no good, and he needed to insert himself. So he went and told these guys that I was basically stealing from him.
Yeah.
And smoking or snorting. Huh?
Did they verify anything, or did they just assume that he was right?
Well, he took their word for it, and they came with a U-Haul truck, and he opened the door, and they unloaded my house, everything I owned. All my furniture, all they left was my underwear.
Yeah.
And he let him in. He was there. He opened the door, let him in. They came, moved all my furniture, all my possessions, all my stereo, all my records, all my... whatever I owned. Literally, everything I owned. Except my underwear and a couple pairs of, you know...
What year was this?
Probably would have been... maybe 81, 82.
81, 82?
Somewhere around that. It could be off a few years, but somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah.
I graduated college in 1980.
Okay.
But this was right around that time. But he basically went to them. They came and, you know, took all my shit. And then came looking for me. And I wound up having to get in my big fucking fancy Cadillac, you know, with really whatever money I had left.
Yeah, and get the fuck out of town.
And head out of town. I had this guy who worked for me who was kind of my right-hand man, who turns out he was the reason I got screwed. He had taken a huge package of coke that I was sending to somebody and took it home and cut it with like half of whatever and then put it in the mail. And so the person who got it refused to pay for it because it was crap. But I didn't find that out until years later. But, you know, there's no honor among thieves, regardless of what they say. But anyway, you know, I wound up running out of town, literally. They were chasing me. They were on the road behind me, and these guys all had guns, and they were all ex-Marines, and they were all not that friendly.
Now, with this whole operation, did it start with marijuana and then graduate to cocaine, or did you get there and it was just like, this is what
it was, you know, it was always weed-driven.
Yeah.
But the coke was, you know, something we all were into, so it became kind of a side thing. It wasn't the main part, but it was, you know.
But I think that's when the guns come in, no?
Well, guns were there anyway. These were big money, and you know, these guys were serious. And we used to hang out in Gramercy Park in New York.
Okay.
Slang hotel, from there? Gramercy Park Hotel.
Okay.
And it was a huge hotel of lots of musicians, so we run into a lot of famous people there. Yeah. But we had the penthouse there, and we'd go up there. Were you guys
just selling to all the musicians?
No, we were up there basically collecting money and partying. And, but we'd go up there and party for like weeks in the penthouse up on the top of that hotel. And literally bags, gym bags stuffed with cash.
Yeah.
You know, millions of dollars of walking around New York with gym bags and party. So,
Yeah.
you know, they were crazy dudes. They were fun when it was fun, and when it wasn't that much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but the whole thing after that, after I left and my brother kind of got inserted and he became kind of involved, he wound up, setting up some shit that didn't really work out in the end, but he got him a bunch of money and wound up him being able to take that cash that he had earned through ill-gotten means and turn it into something that he could use for a legitimate business.
Yeah.
So he started, my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law here in Rhode Island always have been in a lobster business, and we're lobster fishermen. So we set up a lobster distribution company in New Jersey, in Atlantic City, to try to, wash some of that money.
Yeah.
And in the end, that didn't really work out because the mafia just said, okay, we'll take as many lobsters as you have, but we'll never pay you for them. So he kind of got driven out of there and started a business building prefab homes in South Jersey. But, that was kind of a long, winding road through a lot of stuff there. But, it was very interesting. It was a lot of fun and crazy. And the best thing was, in the end, we didn't get caught and or killed. And so at the end of the thing, looking back on it, it's kind of easy to romanticize about it. It was fun. It's like cowboys. There's a bunch of fucking cowboys. And these guys are real cowboys, though.
Yeah.
It was, crazy shit. But,
for sure.
After that, I kind of started to get back to reality. And
when you got out of town, where'd you go?
I went to Florida.
Okay.
I drove down and hung out in Tampa with this guy his cousin lived down there.
Yeah.
And we were still partying our ass off. We still had a bunch of coke, and it was just crazy. It was the beginning of the end. But
might as well go out with a bang.
Yeah, no, that thing all fell apart, and at the end of the thing, I had to come back, my tail between my legs, and kind of rethink what I was really going to do.
Yeah.
And so I had a college degree, and I decided I was going to go work in sales, which kind of had been what my father had been in, and I had a background in business, so I wound up getting some jobs where they trained me in some big technology companies, big corporations, Fortune 500, and went into the corporate world.
Yeah.
And spent a lot of time in sales in technology, selling software, selling hardware, but $1 million worth, like systems that cost $5 million, $10 million, hardware that cost a couple million.
Where is the hardware company?
California. It
Okay.
was like Tandem Computers. I worked for NCR. I worked for Xerox. Some of these companies don't exist anymore, but big companies selling big systems.
Any Apple or Microsoft business over
No,
there?
these were big computers, not laptops or desktops.
Gotcha.
These were back-end, typically mainframes.
Okay.
And all the software around that environment. A lot of communication shit. And we basically, through all of that, made some decent money. Was in sales. Wasn't that exciting. Wasn't certainly as exciting as working for the Cowboys.
For sure.
It was corporate shit. But I was in sales, so I had a lot of freedom. Sales is you go out and stay out until you sell something. So it was a lot of freedom and a lot of traveling. But at that point, it was mostly just domestic shit. And I spent some time traveling on the holidays, and I wound up meeting my first wife down in Buccaneers Creek, Club Med.
Okay.
In, I don't remember the island. Anyway, one of the islands, Club Med. I met this woman from Montreal. And wound up, I lived in the States, she lived in Montreal, wound up connecting with her and eventually marrying her.
Okay.
And I moved up to Canada.
Yeah.
And wound up living in Toronto with her.
You were a Canadian citizen.
Well, I am now. I mean,
there you go.
Spent 13 years there, I have dual citizenship. But
Hey.
I may have to use it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you.
And
At
so,
least you got an exit plan.
Yeah, hopefully I don't have to use it. I mean, because I came back, but
all the Trump supporters are like, go back to Puerto Rico, and you're like, it's part of the United States.
No, but it's so I spent that time in Canada, married to this woman who was French Canadian, who was crazy.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out. But in the meantime,
how many years we talking here?
3 or 4.
All right.
But I had again been in sales, and I wound up working for some companies, travel, and we wound up. This was banking software, selling to banks.
Yeah.
So I had a business going back and forth between Montreal and other cities in Canada, and then basically living in Toronto and traveling back every week to Montreal or British Columbia or wherever. And wound up moving, again, eventually with her to, downtown Toronto in some pretty fancy high-rise in the center of Toronto. But she was crazy, didn't really work out. In the meantime, I had met this other woman from Montreal, who was French, from Paris, who was a model. And, wound up leaving my wife and living with this woman, this French woman.
Yeah.
And wound up marrying her. She was a photographer, like a fashion photographer.
So from one marriage to the next.
Well, not immediately, but not in too much, fairly short order.
That's all right.
And she was a lot of fun. She was crazy too, French, and
seems like you got a type.
Yeah, that was a type. I kind of changed. I changed my type after number 2. But, it was an interesting being in Montreal, which is very French, very European, and a good city, and then working for these companies gave me an opportunity to basically go out with some people and start a new company from ground up, and wound up launching with a bunch of people a new company in Toronto for healthcare, connecting pharmacies, insurance companies, and doctors in a network. And selling that and kind of doing that and banking at the same time. And we made a lot of money. It wound up being a very
lucrative business.
Good sales thing, good opportunity, and led to, some pretty lucrative years of income. But it was kind of in the corporate world, traveling around doing that. And then these same people that I speak of wound up creating out of this another company that was a startup, again, in the banking, healthcare, mostly healthcare, in Canada. And it became a huge company that I became the senior vice president of international business development and spent my time traveling around the world, literally around the world, trying to use this software and technology to find partnerships and joint ventures in basically third worlds. So my first, and in other countries that needed this kind of information and technology to manage their healthcare. So I spent a lot of time, all my time, traveling on the road internationally and opening up new markets. My first deal was in New Zealand, and I spent a bunch of time in Asia, in Cambodia, in China, and all over Latin America. I did a lot of deals, a really big deal in Argentina. Lots of work in Uruguay, in Venezuela, in Chile, all over.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of years going back and forth to South Africa, built a big company down there to do basically insurance claims processing.
Yeah.
And had a good time. I mean, I was on the road basically by myself, traveling wherever I wanted to go with a huge budget, first class air travel, 5-star restaurants. Eat
what
3 meals a
restaurants
day.
were you? Are any memorable restaurants?
All around the world. I mean, pick one. I mean, I ate in some of the best restaurants you could imagine, and pick a country. I mean, we only went to the high end, all over Montreal, all over Canada, but spent a lot of money. And this company that, kind of, I was in charge of international, wound up evolving to a bunch of places that I wasn't really that happy with, and somebody who I had started the company was my partner, wound up basically screwing me, which is not an uncommon story. And then I went off kind of my own with some other people and went to reclaim these deals internationally and went to live in Brazil. And so I lived down in São Paulo for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And went...
What was that experience like?
Awesome. Brazil's great. Brazilians are great. The food's great. The beach is great. The weather's great. There's definitely issues in São Paulo.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
A big hole.
Everywhere there's issues,
Yeah, no, but it's beautiful people, great food. I mean, really cool place. And built some businesses down there, tried to get some joint ventures up and running. And living out of there, I was traveling all around kind of South America trying to develop that business. So that all kind of was going fine. I wound up living with a my second French wife decided that she didn't really like me traveling all over and was fed up with me, so basically moved to Paris.
Yeah.
One day I got a call from my buddy. He said, hey, your wife's selling all your stuff in your condo downtown.